I remember the first time I noticed the way she touched the doorframe when she walked past it, like it anchored her to something. Like if she didn't, she might float away. It was early evening, and the hallway light had that warm, honeyed hue it always got at that hour. I'd only been living in the upstairs room for 3 weeks, but already I could tell when she was coming down the hall, not by sound, but by the change in the air. She never made noise. Just presence. That quiet, steady kind that draws your attention without asking for it. Her name was Mara. She didn't like being called ma'am, said it made her feel like a dentist. She smiled when she said it, but it didn't reach all the way to her eyes. She was older than me. I don't say that like it's a problem, just a fact. Mid-40s, I think. Maybe a few years more. Her hair was the color of dried wheat in late summer, always twisted up in some soft, careless way. And she had these quiet hands, the kind that moved like they'd done too much for too many people. I was 26. Not a kid, not settled. Just in between. The room I rented was small, but it had a window facing the street and a door that stuck in the winter. She apologized about it on the first day, told me the heat made the wood swell, like the house held its breath when it got cold. I remember thinking how strange and beautiful that sounded. How she said it like she wasn't just talking about the house. We didn't speak much at first. Just little things, mail left on the table, laundry schedules. But sometimes, when I came back from work late and she happened to be in the kitchen making tea, I'd find her there, barefoot, hair loose, sleeves rolled up. She'd offer me some, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I always said yes. It was in those moments, the ones between words, that something unspoken started to settle between us. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just present. One night, I passed by the living room and saw her sitting on the couch, legs tucked under her, reading with her glasses slipping low. She looked up. I meant to keep walking, but she said softly, "You can sit if you want." I did. Not close. Just enough to share the quiet. She didn't fill it with talk. She just turned the page slowly, like she was giving me time to catch up to whatever this was becoming. That night, when I stood to leave, she said something I didn't expect. "It's okay. I sleep better when you're here." She said it without looking up. Like it slipped out. Like maybe it wasn't meant for me at all. I stood there for a second too long, fingers still resting on the back of the chair. My throat felt tight, not in a bad way, just full. I wanted to ask what she meant, but I didn't. I think we both knew asking would make it real. Instead, I just nodded. Quietly. And as I turned to leave, she looked up, eyes meeting mine in that warm, lamplit room, and held the look longer than she should have. Long enough for something in my chest to shift. Then she whispered, almost like a confession, "Don't lock your door tonight." And that's where it started to change. She was in the kitchen again, the next night. Same tea kettle, same folded sleeves. She didn't say anything when I walked in, just poured a second mug like she'd been waiting. Like she knew I'd come down even before I did. I sat across from her at the small round table. The wood was scratched in the center, like someone had once dragged a heavy bowl across it, again and again. She caught me staring and gave a small, tired smile. "You're quiet tonight," she said, sliding the mug toward me. "I'm always quiet." She raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. The tea was chamomile. She always made chamomile, like she didn't trust anything stronger. I sipped it too fast, burned my tongue a little. I didn't flinch. She noticed anyway. "You're not used to slowing down," she said softly, almost amused. "Not really." She leaned back slightly, cradling her own cup. "Neither was I. Not until it wasn't a choice anymore." I wanted to ask what she meant, what made her stop. But I didn't. Instead, I let the silence stretch. The ticking of the old wall clock filled the space. It was the kind of silence that made you feel like something might be said if you waited long enough. So I did. Finally, she looked at me, really looked, and said, "My ex-husband used to hate this house. Said it felt like a museum. Said I lived in the past." I didn't move. I barely breathed. Funny thing is, she went on, her voice quieter now, I think I stayed because I needed the past around. Like if I could still see it, I could make sense of it. I watched the way her fingers tightened slightly around the mug. Not shaking. Just holding on. He was older, she added. 10 years. Which I thought meant something. Turns out he just got tired first. I looked down at my tea. There was a question forming in my throat, something about love, or loneliness, or what she meant by tired. But the weight of it stopped me. I don't think he ever really saw me, she said after a moment, eyes unfocused. Not the real me. Just the version that made sense to him. I didn't know what to say to that. So I didn't say anything. I just looked at her, not her face exactly, but the space between her words. And maybe she felt it, because her mouth curved just slightly. And you? She asked, suddenly turning the attention back to me. What did you leave behind? The question sat there, more invitation than interrogation. I shrugged a little. Just pieces. Of something that never really came together. She nodded, as if she understood. Maybe she did. Then, without meaning to, my eyes drifted to the curve of her collarbone, barely visible where her sweater slipped a little. I looked away quickly, but it was too late. Her eyes caught mine again. The moment stilled. I opened my mouth to change the subject, anything, but her hand was already reaching for the sugar jar in the center of the table, fingers brushing mine as she did. Too long. Too deliberate. Neither of us moved right away. I started but stopped. The air felt different suddenly. Thicker. Charged. She didn't pull her hand away immediately. When she did, it was slow, like she didn't want to break something fragile between us. I should sleep, she said softly, standing. Her voice was gentle, but her eyes lingered again, unreadable. I watched her walk to the doorway, the same doorway she always touched. Tonight she didn't. She turned halfway, as if she might say something else, but then just nodded once and disappeared into the dim hallway. The silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt full of everything we didn't say. She didn't come down the next night. Or the one after that. I told myself it didn't matter. That it was probably nothing. Maybe she was tired. Maybe she was giving me space. Maybe, and this one stuck, maybe she regretted that touch. I heard her moving around. The creak of floorboards overhead, the low murmur of a song she sometimes hummed when doing dishes. Everything felt normal on the surface. But there was this invisible thread between us now, stretched taut and silent. I could feel it every time I passed her door. On the third night she knocked on mine. Just once. Barely louder than the rain tapping the windows. I opened it slowly. She stood there barefoot, cardigan wrapped tight around her like armor. Her hair was down again, slightly damp, like she just washed it and hadn't meant to come, but did anyway. I made too much soup, she said, not meeting my eyes. That wasn't true. Still, I stepped aside. She didn't sit right away, just stood near the window, watching the streetlights blur in the rain. I put the bowl on the table and waited. You ever have something feel heavier than it should? She asked quietly. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She turned toward me then, and for the first time, she looked uncertain. Like she wasn't just protecting herself, but me too. I shouldn't be here, she whispered. This isn't fair. Fair to who? I asked too quickly. She winced slightly. To either of us. The silence that followed was the kind that makes your heartbeat feel louder. I stepped closer without meaning to. Not a lot. Just enough that I could smell the clean, soft scent of her hair, something herbal, maybe rosemary. Her arms were still wrapped tight around herself, but her chin had lifted slightly. Brave but bracing. You didn't come down, I said gently. She didn't answer. I thought maybe. I trailed off. Her eyes flicked up. What did you think? I couldn't say it. So I didn't. Instead, I reached for her bowl and pretended like this wasn't burning through me. But as I moved past her Her fingers brushed my wrist, and didn't move. I froze. The room felt too warm, too still. Then she said it, the line that shook something loose. "My husband called today." I turned slowly. She smiled, but there was no joy in it. "He wants to have coffee. Said he's been thinking about things." Something tight curled in my chest. I looked at her, trying not to react, but I must have. "He left, you know," she added. "I didn't ask him to. I didn't ask why he left. I didn't want to know." She stepped back, breaking the contact. Her arms folded again, and this time it felt final. "I don't want to be seen like this," she said softly. "Like someone who needs something she shouldn't." That hurt more than it should have. "I don't see you like that," I said quietly. She looked at me then, really looked. There was a war in her expression. Between wanting and pulling back. Between honesty and habit. "I should go," she said barely above a whisper. But she didn't move. I reached out, almost without thinking, and tucked a loose strand of her hair behind her ear. My fingers lingered. Just a second too long. Her eyes fluttered shut. Just for that second. Then she stepped back, and the moment broke. She left without saying anything else. The door closed quietly behind her. And I stood there in the dark, hands still half lifted, the scent of her skin still clinging to the space between us. I knew I shouldn't be feeling this, but I was. The night she snapped at me, it started with something small. It always does. I was fixing the dripping faucet in the kitchen. The wrench slipped, water splashed, and I muttered something under my breath. She walked in just then, arms crossed over her chest like she'd already been holding something in. "You don't have to fix things just to feel useful," she said flatly. I looked up, confused. "I wasn't, I just thought I'd help." She leaned against the counter, but didn't relax. "I didn't ask you to." I tightened the valve, wiped my hands, and nodded. "Okay." She stood there, silent. The faucet stopped dripping. The room filled with the sound of the refrigerator's hum, and the rain ticking gently on the window glass. She didn't look at me. She was staring at something past me, or maybe just trying not to see me at all. I dried my hands slowly. "Did I do something wrong?" She flinched at the gentleness in my voice, like it hurt more than anger would have. "No," she said. "No, it's not you." But her jaw tightened. Her body said something else. "Mara," I tried again. "If this is about the other night, it's not," she snapped, cutting me off. "It's about every night." That made me go still. "I didn't ask for this," she said, voice shaking now. "I didn't invite this, whatever this is. I just needed quiet. I needed to feel like my life wasn't going to spill over again." I stayed quiet. I let her say it, because it felt like if I interrupted, she'd disappear. "I see you come down the stairs with that look in your eyes, and I feel..." She stopped, closing her eyes tightly. "I feel things I haven't let myself feel in years. And it scares me." She opened her eyes, and there it was, the edge. "It's not fair," she whispered. "You're young. You have your whole life ahead of you. And you're not broken," I said before I could stop myself. She blinked, and for a moment she looked like she might cry. I stepped closer. "You're not too old. You're not too late. You're here. And I see you, Mara. Every day. Even when you try to disappear into yourself." She swallowed hard, lips parting slightly. "You shouldn't say that." "Why?" "Because if you keep saying things like that, I won't be able to stop this." I didn't answer. I couldn't. She was breathing faster now. Her hands trembled slightly, and she gripped the counter to still them. I stepped in, not touching her, not yet, just close enough for her to feel it. "I think about you," I said, the words soft, almost like a confession. "Too much." Her eyes lifted to mine, wide, unsure, burning. And then, something snapped. She moved first. Or maybe I did. I don't remember. But suddenly we were close, too close, the space between us pulled thin, fragile. Her fingers brushed my wrist, then held. Her breath trembled on my neck. My lips hovered near her cheek, not touching, but so near I could feel the heat of her skin. She didn't move away. Then she whispered, Don't do this if you're going to leave. I'm not going anywhere. A beat. Another. And then, the front door creaked open downstairs. Her eyes widened. Her hand dropped from mine. She stepped back. The air between us snapped like a wire pulled too tight. Go, she said. Barely a sound. A warning. A plea. But I didn't move. Not yet. She didn't say anything as I stood there in the kitchen, the warmth of her skin still lingering on my fingers, her breath still caught in the space between us. The sound of the front door closing downstairs echoed like a dropped glass. I waited. But she didn't look at me. Just turned, slowly, walked to the sink, and began rinsing out the already clean mugs. Mara, I said, voice low. She kept rinsing. Was that him? Her hands paused under the water. A small shift. Barely there. She didn't nod. Didn't deny it either. The faucet ran. The quiet dragged on. I thought you said he just wanted coffee. He did, she said. Her voice was small. Not cold, just tired. And then he wanted dinner. And then, he wanted to come by. See the house. I stepped back, like her words had pushed me. She still wasn't looking at me. But I could see the tremble in her shoulder. Like she was bracing for something she didn't know how to stop. He stayed, I said finally. She nodded. Barely. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. It came out in a short laugh, not because it was funny, but because I didn't know what else to do with the ache in my chest. So that's it? Still no answer. I kissed you, Mara? Her back tensed. I touched you and you. I stopped myself. Bit down on the bitterness. She turned then. Slowly. And she looked like she hated herself for what she was about to say. I didn't plan for this. Neither did I. I didn't think I'd feel it. What? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. Me? She looked at me for a long time. Long enough that I saw every line in her face, the kind that only show up when someone's loved too hard, lost too much, and kept going anyway. I don't want to feel anything, she said finally. Not now. Not again. You already do, I said. We both do. And then she broke. Not loud. Not with tears. Just the way her eyes dropped, like something inside her was too tired to fight anymore. I slept in his bed last night, she whispered. It hit like wind being knocked out of me. Not because I thought we were anything yet, but because whatever we were becoming suddenly felt like a lie. I looked down. At the floor. At her hands. Anywhere but her face. She took a step forward. I didn't do it to hurt you. Then why? Because I was scared, she said. Because he's familiar. Because I don't know how to want something that might ruin me. Silence filled the kitchen. The kind that weighs on your ribs. I'm leaving next week, I said quietly. She blinked. What? Job offer. Back home. I haven't told anyone yet. Her breath hitched. She looked like she wanted to say something, maybe to stop me. Maybe to let me go. Neither of us moved. The faucet still ran. The mug sat clean and untouched beside the sink. Her sweater sleeves were wet. I wanted it to mean something, I said. Even if it was just for a moment. It did, she said, and it sounded like an apology. I nodded. Not because it made it better, but because it was all there was. We stood there, two people tangled in something neither of us asked for. Not lovers. Not strangers. Just two people with too much feeling and too little timing. She opened her mouth, as if to speak again, but nothing came. So I left. And she didn't stop me. I hadn't planned on seeing her again. Not before I left. Everything was boxed up. My key was on the hallway table. I told myself I'd leave without a goodbye, keep it clean, unmessy, easier for both of us. But then I passed her room. The door was open. She was sitting at the edge of her bed, back to the door, still in the soft cardigan she always wore in the evenings. Her hands were in her lap, holding something, a photo maybe, or a letter, I couldn't tell. I should have walked away. But instead I knocked lightly, once, and said her name. She didn't turn. Just said, "I thought you'd already gone." "I almost did." A pause. Then, still without looking, "Why didn't you?" I stepped inside. She didn't stop me. The room smelled like lavender and something warm, like old wood, or maybe memory. "I couldn't leave like that," I said quietly. Not without saying what I should have said earlier. She turned now. Her eyes were tired, soft, but open in a way I hadn't seen before. I sat across from her, not too close. "I want you," I said. The words hung in the air like smoke, fragile, impossible to ignore. "But I don't know how this can work," I added. "You're still tangled in something else. I'm not some blank slate either. And we keep getting close, only to—" I gestured, lost for words. "Back away like it didn't happen." Her eyes dropped. "I've been scared," she said. "Of you? Of this. Not because I don't want it." She looked up again, and for once, didn't look away. "But because I do. And I don't know what that means for the life I thought I'd built." I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. "You don't know me anything. But I need to know if I was just some passing comfort, or if you weren't." She cut in, voice raw. "You aren't." We sat in the silence that followed, breathing the same quiet air. "I see you," she said finally. "Not as a boy. Not as something temporary. Just as you." Her voice wavered. "But I can't give you a clean start. I'm messy. I carry things I shouldn't. I flinch at love like it's a punch coming too fast." I smiled, sad and full. "So do I." She laughed, just once, soft and broken, and wiped her eye before the tear could fall. "This isn't fair to either of us." "Maybe not," I said. "But maybe it doesn't have to be fair. Just real." She looked at me then, fully, deeply, the way someone looks when they stop pretending. No walls. No roles. No borrowed safety. "I don't know what to do," she whispered. I stood. Walked over. Not touching her. Just standing there, waiting. She reached up and held my hand, not pulling, not holding me there, just touching. "Honest. You could stay," she said. An invitation. Not a promise. Not a resolution. Just a long look. And the truth. The rain had stopped sometime during the night. I noticed it first by the quiet, not the absence of noise, but the shift in the kind of silence that fills a room when something has finally passed. Mara stood at the window, barefoot again, holding her coffee with both hands like it might drift away if she didn't. She hadn't said much that morning, and I hadn't pushed. We'd said what needed saying already. Now it was just about staying. Her ex had called again. She told me, not to stir drama, but because she promised she wouldn't hide things anymore. He asked her to visit to see what was still there. She said she didn't even have to think about it. She said no. "I think I wanted the life we had to still mean something," she told me, earlier that morning, her voice calm. "But I realized it did. It does. It just doesn't mean I have to keep living inside it." I had my duffel bag packed. Not because I still planned to leave, but because plans had a way of anchoring me. She watched me zip it up, sat beside me on the bed, her hand resting on my knee without speaking. And for once, the silence between us wasn't tight or heavy. It was soft. Earned. She turned from the window now and walked to the kitchen. I followed, and we sat, not across from each other like we used to, but side by side, 2 mugs between us, fingers gently interlaced on the tabletop. No tension. Just warmth. She looked over at me. "So what happens now?" she asked, a small smile tugging at the edge of her mouth. I squeezed her hand once. "We figure it out. Slowly. You're not afraid anymore?" I thought about it. About the beginning. About the stairs I used to hesitate walking down. About the way her eyes used to avoid mine when they felt too honest. About the moment her hand first brushed mine and neither of us knew what to do with it. I'm still afraid, I said. But I want this more than I want to run. She exhaled something that sounded like relief and laughter combined. Then she leaned her head against my shoulder. I still wake up thinking I imagined this, she murmured. You didn't. I keep expecting it to break. It won't, I said, and I meant it. Because this time, we're not hiding from it. She reached for my hand again, threading our fingers together. We didn't need to say it out loud. We were choosing this, with all its complications, all its history, all its risk. Because some people don't show up when it's easy. They show up when it's honest. And love, I was starting to learn, wasn't about perfection. It was about presence. We sat there like that for a long time, two people who had every reason not to fall, and did anyway. Not because it made sense, but because it felt real. Because sometimes, the scariest leap is the one you take with your eyes wide open.